You're listening to the Speaker Talks podcast for speakers, authors, other podcasters, entrepreneurs, and leaders who are looking to grow their business. I'm Steve Sapato, your host, and I have the real pleasure of being able to work with Robert Earl. He's right on here right now. Robert, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself, Steve?
I'm great. And Robert has a really big, nice setup there. You know, I'm sitting here with an earphone set and, my computer, and he's got this microphone and all this big old arm that comes out, and he's ready. So tell us about you, would you, Robert?
Well, it all started on a dark and stormy night, but it wasn't last night. That's for sure. I like to give the thumbnail: born in Oregon, raised in Washington State. Uncle Sam was going to send me overseas, but I got selected by the Presidential Honor Guard. I'm going to date myself. I had the honor of serving under President Reagan. And also during that tour in the Washington, D.C. area, did over 1,000 funerals.
Wow.
We were the ceremonial guard at the Arlington National Cemetery, White House arrival ceremonies, those types of things. My networking, that's where I really learned my first part of networking. And I guess I wouldn't say being an entrepreneur because I didn't really know what that was yet. But I and got to rub elbows with government contractors, government officials, and led to about my next 15 years of doing government contracting, then getting into the .com world.
So wait, you went right into .com world. What made you go to .com? What, like you were doing all this other stuff, and what drew you to .com?
I got out of the military, actually worked in the defense contractor world, actually doing accounting of all things. And then I realized that I kept doing the same reports every week, every month. And I said, there's got to be something out there technology-wise that I could apply and utilize this. So that's where I got into and worked with one of the owners I worked with to start a dial-up internet service provider. Way back in the day when you remember we got all the CDs, we used to get all the discs from America Online, those types of things. Well, we were competing on a local basis. And grew that to where we had over 10,000 subscribers. So really was in that technology field when the .com bust occurred. I had on the table was an offer to either work in Greenwich Village, even though I lived in D.C., flying up on Mondays, back on Fridays, what a lot of your listeners probably do and fill in their time with the podcast as they're doing the traveling. It was either that or to go into the real estate field. And I went into the real estate field primarily because I had 2 teenagers at home at the time and didn't want to do the traveling. And got into real estate in 2001 and was, knock on wood, fairly successful with that over the years, running my own small micro business over that period of time. Led me to management, led me to coaching. During that period. About 4 years ago, I moved to Florida, and I wouldn't say that because I was working very hard on establishing a real estate business here, but got to the point where I made a decision. What did I really want to be when I grow up? And that was helping small businesses, running my own small micro business and media company and helping other businesses. That's what brought me to the point where I'm at today.
Cool. Robert has a unique phraseology. We always say small business. We always say entrepreneur. We say solopreneur. But you call them micro businesses, right?
Correct. And it's along the lines of a microbrewery. You have your Anheuser-Busch's of the world put out the large amounts, and that would be the equivalent of your Fortune 500 company. The recent PPP, payroll protection plan, identified small businesses as being 500 employees or less. But when we stop and look at it, and that's why you had some of the publicly traded companies that were actually getting assistance under the program. So the SBA is really geared towards that level. Well, what about the solopreneur? What about the 0 to 4 employees, 0 to 10 employees? And when you stop and look at that, 94% of businesses that make up over 2 trillion in economic development, economic engine last year were 10 employees or less. So the challenges
Wow.
facing a solopreneur, a micro business, is completely different than a small business, then completely different than what the government is looking at. So having that focus as to, you're sitting in a cubicle and you want to start your own business when you're under the corporate umbrella, or you're an insurance agent, a real estate agent, a gig economy worker, and you're trying to contribute, but yet you face the same challenges that a mid-sized business faces. How do you have navigational points and people helping you with a lighthouse that keeps you off the rocks? That's what Aid to Nav, my current umbrella, is really focused on, is providing that type of
Yep.
focus for folks.
So pause for us right there. You said Aid to Nav. Is that your company?
That is really under my media company. That's my brand that I apply, my company that I really
So how will we
help
find
people.
you? How do we find you?
aid2nav.com. So very simple to have it.
And I'm gonna hopefully give you a little tip here. Anytime you put out that, how do you spell aid? It's like Steve, everybody thinks you know how to spell Steve, and people will spell Steev, so aid, ADE, AID, right?
AIDTONAV, aid2nav.com.
.com now. And also remember that there's all kinds of other stuff out there, like I ran across one the heck did they call it? Anyway, it was like .movie or head games or something. I mean, I didn't realize there were so many dots out there after that. So we go .com, .net, that kind of stuff, .org. And then there's so many others out there, I mean, like, I got one now on my last Speaker Talks event. It was SpeakerTalks.event. So what I learned also, though, was when you have those, you have to put in the HTTPS. So I was putting in SpeakerTalks.event, and nobody could find it. And I was like, it's right there. I don't understand this. But they don't care when you're one of the small people, like you said. You have to put in the HTTPS : / and then SpeakerTalks.event. You don't even put in www. I'm not sure how that works, but it's important that people start learning that just because what we used to do worked, what we have to do now doesn't. And that's why we have Robert on here today, which is he's going to teach us some tips and tricks and some ideas that are going to make us reach into our small business and help us grow. Right, Robert?
You bet. And you can't always call the tech department like we were used to in the corporate world to come over and fix this or to configure the server correctly. What I found is that the micro businesses have common challenges. They face 4 items that they go into. And the first area is staying afloat. They always have a trade-off that's going on between time and money. And as the small business, they always think that they can apply more time towards something. And then they're ending up with the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they're burning the candle on both ends, yet they don't always have the resources available. So that constant pull that's going on to stay afloat is something that they face, and something that, back to other things that we've learned, step 1 is admit that you have a problem. Admit that it's a problem, that it's a trade-off between the time and the money resources that you're going to do in order to stay afloat.
But isn't that one of the biggest challenges you and I face as coaches, is for people to admit, hey, I have a problem? Because we don't want to share our problem. One of my big things, I got a new book coming out, and it's all about asking, right? It's called Shut Up and Succeed. But it's designed all about asking. And we have, as a culture, we have learned don't ask, because people will make fun of you. Ever since we were in grade school, if you ask and it seemed like a stupid question to somebody else, but it wasn't to you, people made fun of you. Oh, you're stupid. You don't know. Even if they didn't know the answer, they felt like they could make fun of you. And we always let them. We cowed down. We went, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm not stupid. When we should have been standing up saying, yeah, I don't know, and I'm not afraid to ask. And that's what we have to teach people, is to ask you for help. They got to reach out to Robert. What's your email, by the way, Robert?
It is robert@aid2nav.com, AIDTONAV.com.
So Robert at aidtonav.com. And it's important that you say, hey, I think I have a problem, but I'm not even sure if I have a problem that he can solve. Please ask us, right? We will certainly go and help. So I interrupted you. You were at the first challenge is stay afloat.
Staying afloat, and that's not a problem, because if we don't know where the answer is, part of it is also knowing where those connections are, admitting that, doing some research, turning to the other folks. When I was in the real estate field, I didn't know what rates were at that particular time. I didn't know what the title, insurance, all the details of it, but I had professionals that I could turn to. And it's the same thing as a micro business, especially doing that, because challenge number 2 is the wind in your sails. Now, this I am going to spell. It's SALES. As you get the wind into your sails, you're so busy and focused on the current deal in hand, the current client that you're focusing on, that at the end of it, as it gets to the end or the deal has ended, you now are turning and looking for new business. And that puts you on an income roller coaster, because you haven't been taking time to service, but yet also go out and, whether you want to call it lead generate, network, those types of things. You can tell the person whose deal has ended when they come into the BNI or networking group meeting, and they have you can smell the panic on their breath because they're looking for the next deal. And so can the customers, so can the clients, because you've been so focused on keeping that wind in your sails. It's understandable.
What's interesting on that is I don't think most people really understand when we talk about that. I'll put it in a different perspective. Everybody knows that there are things between us biologically called pheromones. So if I'm looking for a date, I'm looking for a lady to date, and I give off certain pheromones, women are going to be attracted to me. And that's important that you understand. If I'm giving off the wrong pheromones, women are going to be pushing away from me. Like there's just something about that guy. Well, the same thing happens to us when we're in marketing, sales, when we're generating. I sold cars for about 1.5 years. And I went through this, like you say, this down thing. And I don't care what kind of deal I made somebody, they said no. And my boss, I did that for like 1.5 months, and the boss says, hey, if you don't sell something soon, you're fired. And that puts you in more of a panic, which of course causes a lot more stress. So when you're dealing with that customer, they're like, there's something wrong about this whole deal. And they don't realize that it's me that they were running from. And I did get fired from that job. It was one of those deals where, because the manager didn't understand these things, they push you even harder, panic you even more, and therefore create even more of the problem. Because I'd been, I started off as one of the top salesmen and then dropped to the middle of the pack because I didn't want to work that hard. And then at one point in time went, I hate this. I hate car sales, right? And when you reach that point, then there's nothing you can do to sell, and they're going to put pressure on you. But that's what Robert's talking about. You have to know, right, how to market your business so that you continually fill your sail up with prospects and opportunities. I'm sorry, I interrupted again. Go ahead.
No, most definitely, because it's part of the dialogue that goes on, because it leads to number 3, is that their business, either think of a boat, it doesn't plane, never gets up on plane, and it never leaves a wake. I was speaking with a gentleman this morning, Ken Jones with W3 Insurance, and Ken was talking about one of his best deals that he ever had, one of his clients that he worked with. It was 8 years in the sales process. So he was planting seeds. He finally got the boat up on plane because he was actually doing follow-up and follow-through. He was touching base. So he actually left a wake. I like to tell a story to some of my coaching clients. When I first moved to Florida, I stopped by the Hard Rock Casino and I signed up for their player program. So you have their little card that you put in. But the funny thing is that for 1.5 years, every week on Friday, I would get an email from them. I was getting more
Oh, yeah.
emails from the casino than I was from the companies that I really, truly wanted to do business with. And somebody made a mistake because they must have cleaned out the database and took me out of it. Even though I was interacting with it, I was opening their emails. And so then all of a sudden one day I stopped hearing from them. So the likelihood of me going back to that business, the likelihood of, here's where I saw it during the pandemic. Doors shut down. Businesses did not have an email list, a contact list. And because they didn't have a contact list, they were not able to reach out and offer something like a gift card where people could prepay. They didn't offer something if they were a barber. I know it's funny for me to talk about that, but a barber or a massage therapist to say, hey, look, I'm selling a book of 10. I'll put you on a subscription program for my service, pay now, or pay a portion of it now. Now the business had income coming in. But because they did not have an email list, they were never leaving any wake. They never left any trail behind to do any branding, to do anything. And then it becomes very expensive to try to start that from scratch.
You know, as business coaches, one of the things that frustrates us, we watch people fail. And even if we want to, we can't give them advice because people won't take advice if they don't ask for it. So unsolicited advice is almost upsetting, is really upsetting to a lot of people because don't tell me what I don't know. Don't tell me I don't know this. And you go, I'm just trying to help. And they're like, no, get away from me. So they get madder at you than if you just shut up. One of the places, Village Inn over here, I'm in Apollo Beach, Florida, by the way. So when he said he's in Florida, we had a Bob Evans and a Village Inn. Now, Village Inn has deep pockets. Didn't know about Bob Evans. But here's what I knew is that during this pandemic, as you said, they did not have, and I talked to my retail clients, whether they're restaurant retail or other retail, every time and say whether they're dry cleaners, whether they're, name it, they got to have that list. Are you getting your email? They went, no, this is a restaurant. We don't, we're not going to do that. We're not going to spam people. We're not going to, and I went, that's how you stay in touch. And they're like, no, we're not doing that. Well, neither the Village Inn nor Bob Evans evidently had done anything like that. So when this pandemic hit, everybody was like, are you open? Are you open? Because everybody wants to go out and get something to eat, even if you can't sit down. And Village Inn reopened here about 2 weeks ago. Bob Evans just had a notice saying they won't reopen at all, ever. Now, imagine how much business they could have gotten with a skeleton crew. I mean, I don't know. I've managed a Village Inn 35 years ago, but right. I'm saying with just two cooks, one server, one manager, who worked the phones in the drive up, and all they had to do was put out to their email list. And if they'd have been here, and I don't know how big the list could be, let's say 10,000 people who'd visited their restaurant in the last 2 to 4 years. If you'd have sent that out to 10,000 people and only had 25 or 30 people a day drive by to pick up their favorite dish from your restaurant, imagine how that would have changed the pockets on all these restaurants. And so what Robert said was really true. If you don't do the foundational things, you're not going to be able to scramble to catch up. I'm sorry, you still got number 4 to go.
Well, and so that leads into number 4, and I would have traded my email all day long for a slice of pie or for a discount off of a meal. I would have been able to do that. So number 4 is that they're easily capsized. That one event, one change in vendor, one employee not showing up, one difficulty in a deal getting delayed or payment getting delayed easily capsizes them. And we've thought for years that maybe there's some sort of safety net, whether it be from our Chamber of Commerce, our local other businesses, our government. The government showed you what they think of you as a micro small business, and that was called 2.5 months in the PPP. And that was strictly for payroll, not for added expenses, not for added things. So you got to look out for yourself. And so relying on very early in my real estate career, I had at one time 26 different websites going on trying to attract people, and I ranked in 6 of the top 10 positions on Google. And
Wow.
Google decides one night that they're going to change their algorithm.
Oh, yeah.
And when they
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. Changing the algorithms, it changes our business, changes everything we know. And that's what I'm going to have to write down here, make sure he covers it again. Changing the algorithms. Yeah, changing the how do you spell algorithm? RYTHM, algorithm. Just like, hey, I got rhythm, I can dance, that kind of thing.
therefore I need to recalibrate my GPS. I need a different navigational point that I'm going to, and that's where we can be of assistance to really taking it through a process. And this is where all four of them come together, is that I really look at it where I evaluate, I provide education in case you don't know what you don't know, like how to get your website set up or how to develop that email list. You may have already heard it at a seminar or webinar that you went to, so we brought awareness. That awareness leads to actions. We then report on the actions because you're trying to leave a legacy, whether it be for your own financial benefit, for the impact that you're making. So evaluate and educate, awareness and action, results in legacy, EARL. So there we go. We tie in of how you would spell Robert Earl as well. But that's the approach that we would take in looking at these common problems. It's not a one size fits all. That's evaluate it, figure out if we need to educate you, bring some awareness to you, put it into action. And then from that action, let's measure what the results are. We may have to go back and get more education. We may have to go back and do a different action. But we want to leave behind a legacy and leave behind love.
You know, that's really critical too. When we talk about wanting to help you here on the Speaker Talks podcast, we want you to reach out and talk to us. So I'm going to ask again, Robert, how do they get in touch with you, and what do you offer if they come to your, let's say, your website?
That come to the website. We're definitely going to have the podcast where we're participating with others, but also our own podcast that's going on, a variety of interviews with people that are focused on that micro business field, also informational and inspirational podcast or messages that go through this, and then some how-tos. So actually I've walked people through a how-to set up an AWeber email campaign. That's a very important video that they could watch, stop, pause, go through the process themselves. And we'll be doing this on a number of other systems that go through it. And then the last part is, when we evaluate, is pointing them in the right direction. For many folks that are in sales, or even if they're not directly in sales, they need to work on their speaking. They need to work with someone such as yourself to go through. They need to have, do not join a BNI group, do not join a chamber of commerce until you've talked to Steve and put together your elevator pitch, because you're going to do it week after week after week. And if it's crickets after you get done, then
yeah, and that's important to understand, is that when we talk about networking, the one fallacy that people have when we get into networking is that I'm supposed to be able to go to a networking event and they're supposed to give me leads. That's absolutely incorrect. First of all, you should go to a networking group just to try and give people leads. So imagine, if you will, that I've been going to the same hairdresser over and over and over for decades. And that hairdresser never knows anything about me, right? They don't know anything about me. They go, oh, yeah. And then one day somebody comes in and says, hey, I've been looking for a speaker and I can't find anybody. That's one of my frustrations. And the hairdresser goes, I don't know anybody. Yeah. Really? Okay. Because I didn't make an impression on them as to what I do. Now imagine that same scenario where you've been going to that hairdresser for a while. And every time you go in, you say, hey, I'm still Steve Sapato. I'm the most famous, unfamous speaker in America. So do you know anybody who's been looking for a speaker? And they're going to go, nope, I really don't. Okay, good. Well, hey, can I make a suggestion? And then how about this? We do this or we do that. Hey, can I help you? Or would you like more business? And once in a while, she says, I would like some help with this. You guys know how to do this? I need more customers. I need more profit. I need to know this. And so we spend an afternoon going through that with her. And then one day somebody walks in and says, hey, I need to learn how to be a better speaker. And she goes, oh, have I got the person for you? Most people don't understand that about networking. My job going to any networking event, whether it's BNI or any of these other places, whether it's Chamber of Commerce, is to help somebody in that organization with one of the problems they have this week, this month. Help them with their problems. Sit down and say, hey, let's go to coffee. Let's talk about this. Let's create a relationship where they know that I know and I can help somebody. And when I help them, the next time they have a problem or somebody has a problem, they're going to go, oh, you should talk to Steve Sapato, right? And I got a book out called Become the Go-To Person for Your Own Success. And all that means is when you've helped enough people, right, they will all remember you and they will say, hey, you need something? Ask Steve Sapato. Hey, you need this? There's Steve Sapato. And that's what we want you to start thinking about. One of the greatest challenges that you're going to face when you're out there and I want to back up a little bit here too, Robert. I'll bet you there's 20%, maybe 25% of our audience out here this time around who are completely unemployed, don't have a hope for a job. Either their business is folded up and blown away, or the one they worked for has folded up and blown away. I mean, huge problems. So if you're looking to start a new career, sit down with Robert, right? Sit down with Steve, and we will try and help you find a focus. One of the greatest things you can do is find your heart's desire and then go after it. As long as you got some downtime, 3, 4, 5 more months, let's take advantage of it and build a business that you love building, right, Robert?
Most definitely. And it's something where you're talking about leaving your wake by being involved, by being engaged, not just thinking that you're going to do it all in the one conversation, because then you end up, pardon the picture, but you throw up all over them, versus planting that seed and watering it, not digging it up halfway while it's growing, but looking at having, Gary Keller, you always uses the term with us, I'm looking to have a great career, not just a great year. And that's part of what comes out in what you're saying. And then, yes, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity time for individuals. I've heard of a number of examples where people have reevaluated what they're doing with their business. They've pivoted. They've taken advantage of things themselves. They've actually used some of the dollars that might have come from the federal unemployment, and they've invested that into their own, and what you said, passion. At this point, it is about leaving the legacy. It's taking all the other steps to be able to leave the legacy. And I'm not talking about that being the Lamborghini or these types of things that sometimes, get our attention. No, it's really the purpose of business is to fund the perfect life.
Absolutely right. What's interesting is you said you said something about spewing all your stuff. If you were to go to LinkedIn today, right? I just posted an article because somebody yesterday, their initial contact, and on their initial contact on LinkedIn said, "Hey, I'm new to LinkedIn," blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And they tried to sell me something on the very first connections, and I took that and I wrote a nice little post. I didn't write an article; I wrote a post, so it's fairly short. But I got 80 views on that in one day, which really surprised me. But it was all about when you're trying to make these connections. First of all, learn from the pros. Come over here and talk to Robert. Come over here and talk to Steve. Now, I'm sure that they talked to their pros about how to market on LinkedIn, but somebody gave them really bad advice. The first time you connect with someone, it should be, hey, I'm real curious as to what you do. Could you tell me more about what you do? And then when they respond, you say, hey, that's really cool information. Well, do you do this or do you do that? Hey, maybe we could have a phone call where I could learn more about you. And then it takes, I don't know if everybody's aware that it takes 12 contacts now, 12 contacts to even come close to a sale, okay? So most of you are making 1 or 2 contacts and disappearing from our radar altogether, right? Hey, Steve, I want to sell you this. Nope, thanks, I'm not interested. Okay, well, when you're interested, let me know. Okay, bye, gone, right? And do you put me in a database? Do you reach back out to me at all even? Probably not, because you don't know enough to make those 12 contacts, and that's so vital. The relationship that Robert and I have, if I reach out to him 2 weeks from now and say, hey, Robert, this was a great conversation, thanks a lot. And the next week I reach out to Robert and say, hey, your podcast is ready to go up. It'll be up on this date, right? And then when it comes out, I say, do me a favor. Tell me what you think of it, right? And all of those things are, so we've had 4 contacts right there before we're done with just this one piece of business. And this isn't making anybody any money right here. We're trying to help you make money. So understand that wherever you are, it's those 12 times you're going to need to connect. And so get with a great coach. Get with somebody who knows their stuff. Robert has an idea that can help you. I have an idea that can change your life. And that's what's fascinating. I find people all the time, Robert, who say, well, I'd love to work with you, but I don't think I have enough money, right? And one of the greatest challenges is, when will you have enough, right? When's enough money? And so the question goes back to, are you investing in yourself? And I'm not talking about investing $25,000 or $35,000. I was just I do SpeakerTalks on stage stuff. And one person who wanted to be on the stage, it's only $1,500 to get on the stage. You get a professional sizzle reel in front of it, all that good stuff. But they said, I can't afford it because I just spent $10,000 to get a book written. Wow. Where did you get 10,000? Well, they're going to do it over a year. But I want you to understand that you have to look at what's going to bring you the most bang for your buck, as they say. And so, Robert, how do you help them account for, what are you worth? How do they know that you're worth your money?
I think part of it is trust but verify. I think I go back to who I originally worked for with Ronald Reagan. It was a term. It was something that was in there, is that I'm going to give someone the opportunity. I'm going to, part of the reason of doing a podcast is that people get an opportunity to listen. They get to hear about what are the types of questions that are being asked of others. What is it that they're trying to do from their evaluation? What areas are they covering? I think it was Zig Ziglar that originally used the term with cassette tapes as to go to Automobile University, go through, consume the information, listen to what you're doing, have what you yourself are trying to accomplish, and then put the person through the paces. I think anybody that's worth their weight in gold that wants to provide you with the service is okay with that. They're okay with going through and playing a little bit of the mental gymnastics and talking about it, whether it be whiteboarding, whether in this particular environment, Zooming about it and talking about it. The other aspect of it is what I listen for is I'm listening for them to say, that's a great question, let me find out. If they think that they know it all, well, we won't even go down a political avenue. If they think that they know it all, then you need to take a step back and say, wait a second. It's not possible with all of the different roles and hats that a solopreneur, a micro business.
Yeah, that micro business coach, for what we have to learn, it's not possible that somebody knows it all. And that's really important.
Different resources, different people. And so getting that all in one type of package, it's refreshing to have somebody say, I really don't know.
Yeah. And that's when we dig in and say, but I'll ask one of my mentors. I'll ask the people I know. And you ask other experts. And that's what you're going to find that you have to do, right? You have to find those other experts that are going to help you grow your business. And that's critical to you understanding those things. So we're actually out of time. Robert, one last quick, whatever you want to say to these folks.
Love for you. Just do the search Aid to Nav, AIDTONAV on YouTube or your major player. Steve, I appreciate you taking the time to work with the business community as well. I really appreciate it.
Sure. My pleasure. And the podcast, again, is designed to help you grow your business. So please reach out to us. We will be glad to answer some questions for you. Of course, we'd love to make you clients of ours, but we will also show you the value in growing your business. If I say, hey, I'm going to make you, I just watched something the other day that said, I can make you $1 million speaker in 3 months. No, you can't. It's not possible, right? And so you have to look at all this stuff, believe what you want to believe, but we're the people who back up what we have to say. So please reach out to Robert, reach out to myself. I'm Steve at stevesapato.com. And please subscribe to SpeakerTalks podcast so you don't miss out on any opportunity to learn just one more thing that could change your life. God bless.